Okay guys, today we're going to take a look at depreciation. Depreciation is the center of what every single car goes through the minute it gets off the lot. I'm sure you've heard the saying, when a car leaves a new car lot, it's automatically worth 30% less. You automatically lost 10 grand. Whatever they're saying, it's absolutely true. You're going to lose money the minute you take the car off the lot. But did you ever wonder why, if the car is brand new, even though you've driven it, but if you've barely driven it, why does it matter and why does it lose so much money right off the top? So I'm going to walk you through understanding how the new car market works and how used cars become such a great bargain and why they become such a great bargain. So first off, understand that every new car comes out of a manufacturer with three different things. First, a manufacturer invoice, which is the invoice at which the manufacturer's true cost of creating that car is. Then a dealer invoice, which is what supposedly the dealer is willing to sell the car over in order to get a kickback from the manufacturer. And then, of course, your MSRP, which is your manufacturer suggested retail price. Those three things are the core things that you'll see or you'll hear a dealer talk about. Now, they'll never talk about the manufacturer invoice because they don't want you to know about that one. The ones they'll tell you about is buy 1,000 over invoice and so on. So you actually believe that you're buying for 1,000 more than what they paid. When in reality, what you're really buying is you're buying not only 1,000 more into their profit, plus the profit they have between the manufacturer invoice and the actual dealer invoice. So understand that all of these things are complete bullshit and that they have really no relevance to the reality of what you can buy cars for. When you buy a car new, when let's say, let's use an exotic car because I'm just an exotic car nut. When you use, let's say, a Ferrari 458, right? Oh no, that's a bad example. Ferrari doesn't really do rebates. Let's use the Corvette. Actually, that's a good example. You want a Corvette Stingray, and they sell for roughly 60, 70 grand, fully loaded. So you walk into the showroom, you buy that car. The minute you walk out the lot, it's worth 50K. Why? Here's what happens. 2014, GM introduces this car. End of 2014, GM can't sell all the remaining cars. GM starts discounting the cars, 10 grand to move them out. So now your car right off the bat is used, right? But they're selling a new one for 10K less than you paid. So right then and there, you just lost 10 grand because someone can walk in a dealership, buy a brand new one, 10K less than what you paid. So that's why the first depreciation hit happens on your car. Dealer rebates suck, and dealers willing to move cars because end of year inventory come out suck. When new car models come out, then obviously the last year model goes down. Why? Because the warranty is shortening, as well as the fact that the car actually has new features the following year. As small as these features may be, they do make a car impact. So imagine in 2015, the Corvette comes with more colors, more options, or has now the option of ceramic brakes. These things now devalue the 2014s because the 2014s now have 1 year warranty off of them and also don't offer these options. So someone can now walk in 2014 to buy a 2015 model and is now able to buy a better car than yours at the same price you paid for yours. So you again lose money on the appreciation for the 2014 models. Let's go one more step after that. Not only the dealer offers incentives such as rebates, but the dealer offers 0% financing on cars they can't move. What does that mean? Someone can now get in a car that you bought for X amount of money for less money per month. Most shoppers are finance or lease shoppers, so therefore most shoppers care that the dealer offers 0%. Once again, an additional incentive to pay a few thousand more to buy from the dealer instead of you. So again, one more thing that just impacts your car. The final things, the two final things that really crush the car market and that crush your car for having bought it is lease returns. Every car can be leased, and a lot of times you'd be surprised. I think in California, 60% of the cars are leased. So imagine if you buy this brand new BMW and you drive it and you're leasing it, so 2 years later you return it, or 3 years later you return it. The biggest leases are 24 and 36 months. Those 2 points are the 2 main points where car dealers get an influx of cars coming back into the market and have a huge inventory. What happens when there's a lot of inventory, there's very little demand, prices go to complete shit. So your exact car that you bought is now worth less because more people were leasing it and are not trading it back in, giving an influx of supply and the lack of demand because it's no longer a new hot car on the market. It's not 3 years old, so it's pretty widespread out there. So you have all of these things, that are impacting you. And the final thing that completely crushes the price of your car is the warranty. Most manufacturers give you 3 years. The luxury ones give you 4, exotic ones give you 2 to 3. But at the end of the day, when a car goes out of warranty, people know, and when I say warranty, I mean the original warranty, like the official original, not the certified pre-owned. The car starts completely tanking because nobody wants to take on, BMW or Mercedes repairs out of their pocket. And as you'll find out in one of our case studies, I've spent maybe $5,000 my cost at wholesale trying to fix a car that cost new 180. I bought it for 60, and I've spent $5,000 trying to bring it back to the right place, but it continues to have issues. That said, I'm taking these 5K cash losses that a lot of people can't afford to take. In my case, it's different, but the average buyer can't afford to start investing $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a month repairing a car. So they'd rather buy a new car. They'd rather buy a crappier car that doesn't have options, and therefore they'll get ripped and they'll lose all their money. They don't realize they'll lose a lot more than $5,000, $6,000 over the course of a lease, but they have the peace of mind because they're living paycheck to paycheck, and they don't understand the idea of actually making money or really realizing the value of real money. So what they do is they waste their time just looking at what they're making a month and what they can afford to spend. But that is the reality of what's out there, and that is how you'll have to learn how to position your sales in the future as well. So for now, I just wanted you to understand the main things that cause the depreciation that occurs on your particular car when it's new and going to use. Now, what we're going to learn here is how to actually pick up, and I'm going to walk you through a chart on how you're going to actually pick up the car right between that time, between the first lease term, which comes due at the 24 to the 36 month, and the time the warranty runs out right at the 4-year mark. So you're going to buy the car right with some warranty left, you're going to enjoy it, and you're going to sell it before the warranty runs out as well, or you're going to buy it right when it has warranty enough, but not enough left for the price to go up when you buy it, and you're going to be able to sell it to the right person, making sure it's all fixed and perfect due to the warranty outages. So, make sure to keep watching as we'll cover the depreciation graphs of a Lamborghini LP550, and we'll understand a lot about how cars in general depreciate and how leases really impact the depreciation curve and when the right time is for you to buy.
Yeah, missing data. Obviously, depreciation is key. And when I say missing data, this is the stuff you need to know. Depreciation is a powerful system you need to master. Most exotics and luxury cars pretty much lose the bulk of their value, as you saw in the first 3 to 4 years. 3 years, the majority, 4 to 5, a little bit less, but in most cases after 5, you pretty much deplete it. Again, just like the watch system, this supply and demand plays a significant role in not only depreciation, but in terms of the actual cost of purchase. Also, every time leases come down after 24, 36, and 48 months, you're going to see a huge drop in prices on cars simply because, again, supply and demand, right? More supply floods the used car market, less demand. Therefore, prices go down a shit. Dealer incentives always impact models. So think about this way. If a dealer is selling a car for $38,000 new, suddenly offers, you just bought that car, and in 6 months you hear that they offer now $6,000 rebate plus 0% financing, your car just became worth $10,000 less just because the dealer had that promotion. Even though your car is exactly the same car, but now nobody wants your car because they can get that deal at the dealer for a brand new car. So again, this is stuff you need to know and you need to understand in order to move forward. For the first time in business, we're looking at depreciation as a good thing in this business. We're not looking at it as a bad thing. Consider that any time depreciation takes place here in the car industry, you win. So cars that depreciate more so because of their, I guess, just their marquee or the way they're considered, or maybe they have issues during the first years, are good for you, not bad. You just want to make sure you're not that sucker that bought it new. Here we're looking at the depreciation on a brand new LP550. Now, where do I get these numbers from? I get these numbers from Lamborghini. I have a lot of friends in the business. And so when you lease a new Lamborghini, Lamborghini does its lease schedule for you, in terms of what the car is worth as you drive it. And so they have the, the lease trade-in value divided for themselves into further models. So it's really weird, but you'll see here it starts at $235 for a really nice LP550 Spider fully loaded. And after year 2, look at that, it goes to $147. You're talking $100K off. Most Lamborghini leases only allow 2,500 miles a year. So think about this. You're talking about 5,000 miles on a car, $100K off. And if you look at year 3, it goes down a little bit less, right? And then year 4, even a little bit less. And then look at what happens in year 5. It goes back up. Why? Because everything hits a threshold where it doesn't move. So our goal in this business and our goal in this system is to go ahead and get the car anywhere here around the 142 mark, right? Or capture it all the way here at the 138 mark. If we're doing a short run, then we want the latest, hottest car. We want to be around here, and we want to sell it between 3 and 4 years of age, you see? But even if we keep it because we can't sell it, we're not going back up in value as long as we don't drive it. Many of you may not be able to afford to keep a 150K car in the garage for 2 years, but the beauty of it here is that even if you did, you're not really losing more money than you did if you kept it 1, unless you're putting a lot of miles on it. So if you consider the 142K mark here, if you're short-term, that's when you want to buy the car. If you're long-term, then you want to go ahead and pick it up later. And either you can do a good flip on after 5 years of age, or you can go ahead and purchase it, drive it for a while, and never really worry about it. You see, you're expected to accumulate 2,500 miles a year. So, or let's say up to 4,000 a year. So if you're looking at 5 years, even at 2,500, right, you're looking at roughly 10 to 15,000 miles. If I can show you how to find an LP 550 for 140,000, but after it's 5 years of age, right, but it only has 2,000 miles, then guess what? You now have 8,000 miles of allowance that you can drive this car up for yourself before it's worth, again, it's 138. Because technically, even though it's worth probably 145, 146 because of the mileage, you're still buying it at 138 using some of these strategies I'm going to show you. And then you're ultimately able to drive it up to the mileage allowance and then get rid of it for really what it's worth, because someone else will pay that because they don't know about this system. So here we're going to look at the depreciation on a Mercedes-Benz CLS 63 AMG according to Mercedes USA. The car MSRP is at 105. That is rounded off. Year 2 depreciation, you're talking about $87,000 for the car. Year 3, 65, and look at what happens on year 4, $44,000. You're talking about 40% of the value after 4 years. And then again, year 5, 38,000. So look at this, like this is incredible. In 5 years, right? In 5 years, the car is worth a third of what it was new. So if you consider that you had a loan on this car, assume that you bought it new, and you wanted to get rid of it before 5 years, look at the loss you're taking here. So what if you bought it here? Or what if you bought it here? And so you didn't have to take on this curve, right? That's what I'm going to teach you. And so here you can look again at the depreciation over 5 years, significant loss. This is different. I wanted you to see the difference between an exotic and a non-exotic. All right, so let's look at my way versus leasing. And first, let's break down the leasing protocols themselves. So for those of you who don't understand what leasing is leasing is when you take a car that you otherwise wouldn't be able to afford, for example, and you rent it for the long term. What does that mean? So let's assume a Range Rover costs $70,000. We looked at the depreciation schedule and saw that after 3 years, that Range Rover would be worth $35,000. So if that holds true, and these are just examples, I'm not basing that on any actual facts, then the $35K difference, which would be 50% of the price, is ultimately what you need to break down over 36 months, which is your lease term, and that gives you your payment. Because you're not financing a car that you hope to pay back in full, what ends up happening is after 3 years, you have the opportunity at that point to go ahead and look into either purchasing the car you're still in and say, hey, I want to continue making payments, so I want to refinance it now and it's worth less. Or at that point, you can just give the keys back to the dealer and say, you sell it, I don't really care to do anything with it. I just want a different car, and you walk out of it. The advantages there in terms of leasing is you're going to be looking at a few things. So the advantages are you're going to be able to take off the full lease payment as a write-off. Because it's usage of the car, it's not so much based on a payment to own a car. You can actually write that off, especially if you own a business. So there's value in that as well. So don't really consider that. Now we're going to look at an example here on what a lease on a Lamborghini LP 550, brand new 2013 for 3 years, it looks like. So the MSRP on the car is $235,000 out of pocket. So the actual car was an LP550 13 Spider. It had the couture stitching option, the carbon fiber interior. It had the carbon fiber steering wheel, the e-gear, and it had, upgraded wheels, and it was a very well-loaded car. Now, what happens to the car, despite being worth $235,000, like we looked at earlier on our depreciation card, right? With the car itself, because it's new, right? You can't really lease used cars. So loss of $95,000 on the car alone in 3 years, meaning that the car now is going to depreciate almost $95,000 in 3 years. Now, what does that mean? What does that exactly entail, right? Like, what is the $95,000? Is that, do you care since you don't own the car? Well, of course, because you're going to be paying for that. That's part of the issue here. The other issue is you're going to also be faced with higher insurance because the total value of the car is not just $95,000; it's the $235,000. If we look at the kind of payment you'll be making, you'll be putting $60,000 down if you want to do a large down payment for a reasonable $1,600 a month. So you're losing $60,000 out of pocket and then still must make the $1,600 a month. You would be looking somewhere at $4,000 if you put very close to nothing down. So again, this is a lot of money to go into a car, and you're not getting any of that back. But what you are getting back is the tax write-off, on that payment. So that's definitely helpful. The one benefit here, though, is you have a brand new car, and obviously all the warranty covers everything. So there's absolutely no worries at all that something could go wrong in that sense. So definitely not a bad scenario, just a scenario that makes you lose a total of $95,000 on the car loan, not even on the maintenance or anything else occurring, just on the car loan within 3 years. Now let's compare the same thing with My Way. So let's look at the same car with less than 10,000 miles, without warranty, but built in 2010. We're talking about the same exact look. Now the big difference is, let me be very transparent here because someone's going to call me out on this. The difference is we're looking at an LP560. What is the big difference? It's all-wheel drive versus rear-wheel drive. So is it a big deal? I would say it is to someone who races cars. I wouldn't say it is to someone like an ordinary person who's out there to just purchase a car, enjoy it for a little bit, and then move on to another car. They look dead on identical. The LP560 is a little bit heavier and drives slower, but nonetheless an equally powerful car and beautiful car. I personally also prefer the 550, but not in a way that would keep me, based on what I'm about to show you, on buying this car instead. So built in 2010, 10,000 miles, so it's 3 years older, someone gave up this lease. Same look, different years. Now you can purchase that car. Remember, I showed you that depreciation schedule and what happens after 3 years, right? Why does that happen on this car? Because one, it's out of warranty. 2 years unlimited mileage on Lamborghinis. But guess what? It's past the 2 years, so it drops. What else is going on with this particular car that's made it drop? It took its depreciation schedule and volume came back, right? Leases were up 2 years, 3 years after. This car is now available in volume. Even though you might only see 10 available online, well, that's volume for Lamborghinis. So it's different, but yet again, it still holds true. So we can purchase this car roughly at about $140,000, right? Which is, that's pretty decent, I would say. So additionally, let's even assume in this case that we have $10,000 in repair or maintenance. And let's just assume that, right? That our buy price can be $140,000. And we're going to add an additional $10,000 in repairs or maintenance. The total cost of ownership now is $15,000 for 3 years. So how do we come to that number? So we have the $140,000 purchase price, and we're going to resell this car at $135,000. Okay? Now, assuming that here's the beauty of it. Remember what I showed you on the depreciation graph. It doesn't really depreciate anymore once it reaches a point. So this car will never be worth like $85,000. As of right now, unless another decade passes by, this car is going to hold between the 130 to 150 mark, depending on miles and condition and everything else. So even if we take, now, you don't have to have $10,000 in repairs or maintenance. That doesn't make any sense, right? But, I've never had any repairs that were 10 grand. Is it possible? Of course, I've had friends that have had repairs that were 50 grand because they didn't do their homework. But think about this. The 10,000 in repair and maintenance is even additional. It's not even guaranteed you'll incur that. The loss of the $5,000 here, right? It plus the $10,000 equals $15,000. Assuming you keep the car 3 years, right, and you actually want to enjoy it, you're talking less than $500 a month for a car that costs $250,000. Tax write-off on the car itself and sale at a loss creates additional write-off. So let's kind of pause and see what that means. Tax write-off on the car itself. Well, you're going to write off the car as an actual asset for the business instead of business use. So you're going to be able to deduct the value of the car divided by 5 years. So that'll give you a yearly depreciation schedule. And then when you sell the car, you're going to show that you had a $5,000 loss because it only assumes what the purchase price was and what the sale price was, not what the depreciated amount is. Once you go actually trade that car in to a dealer, or at that point try to sell it, you run it through a dealer and you get a tax credit so that the tax is already paid. You don't have to pay tax anymore. If you account the write-offs, and if you account all of these things, and assuming the $10,000 repairs, your total true cost of ownership was free. Now, because you could have spent less, you could have even made money, or you could have maybe sold it for less and ended up, not having any expenses or vice versa. But let's assume even the worst. How many people would actually pay $500 a month to have a $250,000 Lamborghini Spider? So that by itself, I think, should be good enough in order to understand why this system just makes more sense than something else in terms of leasing or buying.